right? Anye, many others. Cha, also. Muniya, sages. Brahman, O Brahmanas. Brahmarata, Shukadev Goswami. Adaya, and such others. Amala, completely purified. Shishai, by the disciples. Upeta, accompanied. Ajakmu, arrived. Kashyapa, Kashyapa. Angirasa, Angirasa. Adya, others. Translation, and many others like Shukadeva Goswami and other purified souls, Kashyapa and Angirasa, and others, all accompanied by their respective disciples, arrived there. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Shukadeva Goswami, Brahmarata, the famous son and disciple of Sri Vyasadeva, who taught him first the Mahabharata and then Srimad Bhagavatam, Shukadeva Goswami recited 1,400,000 verses of the Mahabharata in the councils of the Gandharvas, Yakshas, Raksha, and Rakshasas, and he recited Srimad Bhagavatam for the first time in the presence of Maharaj Parikshit. He thoroughly studied all the Vedic literatures from his great father. Thus, he was a completely purified soul by dint of his extensive knowledge in the principles of religion. From Mahabharata, Subha Parva 4:11, it is understood that he was also present in the royal assembly of Maharaj Yudhishthira and at the fasting of Maharaja Parikshit. As a bona fide disciple of Sri Vyasadeva, he inquired from his father very extensively about religious principles and spiritual values, and his great father also satisfied him by teaching him the yoga system by which one can attain the spiritual kingdom. The difference between fruit of work and empiric knowledge, the ways and means of attaining spiritual realization, the four ashrams, namely the student life, the household life, the retired life, and the renounced life, the sublime position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the process of seeing him eye to eye, the bona fide candidate for receiving knowledge, the consideration of the five elements, the unique position of intelligence, the consciousness of the material nature and the living entity, the symptoms of the self-realized soul, the working principles of the material body, the symptoms of the influential modes of nature, the tree of perpetual desire, and psychic activities. Sometimes he went to the sun planet with the permission of his father and Naradaji. Descriptions of his travel in space are given in the Shanti Parva of the Mahabharata. At last he attained the transcendental realm. He is known by different names like Aranya, Arunisuta, Vyasaki, and Vyasat Maja. So we'll speak a little bit about him. So, Omigana Timidanda Shah, Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshur, Meditam Gena Tasmai, Shri Gurve Namaha. So, there's several stories about him. Of course, the most famous story is that he was completely absorbed in Brahman before he took birth. And being absorbed in Brahman, he was something called an Atma Rama. Anyone's heard that word before? Atma Rama means one who is taking pleasure in the self. And of course, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu defined this word Atma Rama in different ways, but that's not the subject matter of this particular class. So he was completely absorbed in Brahman. And being completely absorbed in Brahman, when he basically was within his mother's womb, he didn't want to come out, because when you come out, as described by Bhaktivinoda Thakur and other acharyas, you actually forget your spiritual promises from before. If you're actually pious and devotee, in the womb, you actually begin to pray to Krishna. Not that everybody prays to Krishna, but someone who's actually Krishna conscious from past births prays to Krishna. And there's really very little enjoyment in the womb, right? Does anyone remember? No, you don't remember. See, bad memories, Kali Yuga. So, like Prabhupada describes that, it's just, the mother takes chili peppers, you feel it, because you're connected to the mother's digestive and each system. The mother's, everything about the mother. You're just like one with the mother, basically, the body. So it's not a pleasant experience. Cooped up for 9 months, 10 months, whatever. And so Shukadev Goswami, he was actually happy with that experience because that experience was such that he wouldn't try to enjoy the material world. Sometimes Krishna puts his devotees in an extremely miserable situation, so they lose hope, akinchana gochara. They lose hope of enjoying the material world. So he actually, you're thinking Prabhupada. Too bad Prabhupada's leaving us. It's like a nightmare, Prabhupada's leaving. So anyway, so he thought, once I come out, then everyone will love me. And Bhaktivinoda describes it as they come out and you think, that's the life, because everybody's saying, oh, how cute that little baby is. And you forget about your past spiritual activities or consciousness. You're just thinking, wow, it's nice. Everybody's just like pinching my cheek. Well, pinching my cheek's not pleasant. So, but everybody's looking at me and appreciating me. That's a child. Sometimes you see adults who never grew up, and they're actually want that sort of attention, isn't it? I've seen it. We have some politicians like that. So, anyway, so he was thinking, I don't want to come out. I want to stay here. And so, it was quite concerning for his father that here you have, 9 months, 10 months, 11 months, 12 months. When does the baby due? I know. That's the question they're asking. When does he due, I know it's due in 9 months, not that bad. Actually, in Vedas it says 10 months. But anyway, that's another point. But let me take some water. So so his father is very concerned. Oh, there goes Lord Nityananda too, or was it Lord Chaitanya? Oh, Lord Chaitanya. So his father's very concerned. What are we going to do? And, it went on and on. Some people say it was 16 years. But anyway, whatever it was a long time. And the mother must have been quite big after that long time. And so, anyway, it took Krishna and his father explaining the purpose of life, and then, because he understood there was a purpose of life beyond being absorbed in the Brahman, Haribol, close the door. Cierra la puerta, por favor. Very good. So, material bodyitis. So because his father was concerned, they actually spoke, some versions are that he spoke the Bhagavatam. Krishna came to try to convince him to come out. And he came out. And as soon as he came out, he didn't want any of that sweet talk from his parents. He just said, I'm out of here, because I do not want to get entangled in this material world. So he ran away. And his father's running behind him, shouting, what? Oh, my son! Oh, my son! And Shukadeva Goswami is thinking, oh, God, he is really attached. So got to pacify him. So the descriptions, the acharyas describe that Shukadeva Goswami actually made a duplicate clone who his father could take back with him. So the father was happy, Shukadeva was happy, and he went to preach Krishna consciousness. Of course, this particular story illustrates the fact Atmaranmascho Mariyo Nigrantapi Rukrame Gurvantiya Haituki Bhakti Tambuta Gunahari, a famous verse, that even those who are self-realized, Brahman-realized, are attracted to Krishna's pastimes. A very important verse, the Atmarama verse, which Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu discussed many times with different devotees. So anyway, so Shukadeva Goswami, he went and he did come back and he learned the Bhagavatam from his father. He actually did come back. It's not that he just ran and preached to Maharaj Parikshit, but he came back as described here, learned the Bhagavatam and learned the Mahabharata from his father. Jai Nityananda Ki Jai Haribo. So we're losing Prabhupada, Lord Nityananda, and Lord Chaitanya. Phew. Oh my God. How inauspicious. Anyway, so after he learned from his father, he went and preached Krishna consciousness to Maharaj Parikshit. And when he was preaching, actually didn't have any clothes on. He was so detached. And nobody, like common people, didn't understand his exalted position. And they were simply making fun of him, this naked boy, 16 years old, running. He had a similar complexion to that of Krishna, bluish complexion. But when he arrives at the sages who were sitting there with Maharaj Parikshit, who was fasting until death, and the sages offered him obeisances, and the sages posted him in the high position, all the other people who were making fun of him went away. And Prabhupada said, you can tell the difference between a fool and a great personality by what they say. And then Prabhupada told the typical example of the jackal in the forest. Anyway, there was a jackal one time, some paint spilled on him, and he looked really cool. He was luminescent, glowing. And then all the animals started to worship him. You know the story? You heard it? No, some of you haven't. So anyway, so the jackal is not the king of the forest. So all the animals started to worship him, including the lion, who's the king of the forest, Lion King. And they put him on the big throne. And he was sitting there enjoying life. And all of a sudden it became the dusk. It means the sun went down. And at the dusk, the other jackals howl, right? Have you ever been in Mayapur? You hear all the jackals. Whatever. And he started howling. Then they understood he was just a jackal. And then the lion said, Sarira Vijaja Jitendya Tehekala Jivafale Vishaya Sagare Dharmade Joyati Lobamai Saturmati Takage Tina Samsare Krishna Bodhidoi Moy Kribara Jivajoy Srapasad Badal by. Same written, you know that verse? You don't know it? Same written Pau Radhakrishna Gunagal Primadaka Chaitanya. You don't know that verse? Oh my God, what movement are you a member of? That's a Prasadam prayer the Prabhupada wanted us to say before Prasadam. You don't say that here? Sarira, Vijaja, you don't say that? Now you know it. Okay. Important. So anyway, so the lion took his prasad, his jackal prasad, and he was happy. So in other words, you can tell the difference between someone who is educated and someone who's stupid by what they say when they open their mouth. So, and then there's another story told by my godbrother, Gaur Govinda Maharaj, which is interesting, because Shukadeva Goswami, he describes, is actually eternally Shuka. He's called Shukadeva because for two reasons. One reason is because a parrot, Shuka, touches fruit and he makes the fruit sweeter because the fruit can actually get sweeter, like a mango or something like that. Another reason is that he is an incarnation, at least according to Gaur Govinda Maharaj, who was quoting Shastra. He is an incarnation of Radharani's parrot. Interesting, isn't it? And the way he tells the story, I'm prefacing it by saying it's coming from him. The way he tells the story is that once upon a time, Lord Shiva was reading or speaking the Bhagavatam to Parvati. Anyone's heard this story before? All right, he was speaking to Parvati. Parvati's his wife. And she was doing the same thing that you all do during the Bhagavatam class. Sleeping. Anyway. You understand? All right. So, anyway, this is a story he tells. I mean, you could take it metaphorically. Okay. So she's sleeping, and he keeps asking, Lord Shiva keeps asking, are you hearing me nicely? And this parrot, Radharani's parrot, is listening and repeating in the same intonation voice as Parvati. Yeah, it's really blissful. And so the parrot keeps repeating, and Lord Shiva thinks everything's all right. And then he looks up and he sees this parrot. And he starts to chase the parrot. He gets really angry that the parrot is imitating Parvati's voice. And the parrot is going away. At the same time, like I said, this is a story told by Gaur Govinda Maharaj. At the same time, Srila Vyasadev's wife is hearing Bhagavatam from Srila Vyasadeva. And she likes the Bhagavatam, she's really awake. And she's so much awake, she's going, wow, with her mouth open. And then the parrot flies into her mouth. Anyway, and that's how Shukadeva Goswami got in the womb. Anyway, I'm just saying that was a story told to me by Gaur Govinda Maharaj, and he knows, he wouldn't make up anything. So he told many nice stories about Lord Jagannath and Shukadeva Goswami. So in any case, that may be a metaphorical story, but it indicates that Shukadeva Goswami was and is a pure devotee of Srimati Radharani. That's the point. And he was acting like a Mayavadi. And it's similar to the story of Brahaspati acting like a Mayavadi when he assumed the role of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. You understand? And Lord Chaitanya preached him. So it's a very similar type of situation. So we don't say that Shukadeva Goswami was actually a Mayavadi. But there is a similar story where the four Kumaras, who were Brahmavadis before, they actually came to the doorway of Vaikuntha and they were exposed to Lord Narayan, and they smelled the tulsi leaves, offered at the lotus feet of Lord Narayan, etc., the flowers, and they became devotees. So the whole point is that even if one is a Mayavadi before, or not Mayavadi, a Brahmavadi, there's a difference between the two. Who just disappeared now? Tulsi Devi. Oh my God. Panchatattva's still there, aren't they? Okay, that's good. That's a relief. Not only did all the Vaishnavas leave, but Krishna's leaving with them. So Anyway, the moral of the story is that if someone is a Brahmavadi, that means someone, it's like an agnostic. Someone who's meditating on Brahman but not blaspheming Krishna, they have a chance by being exposed to Krishna consciousness. Where if one is a Mayavadi who blasphemes Krishna by saying that Krishna's body is material, then they will not take up Krishna consciousness. There's a difference between the two, Brahmavadi and Mayavadi. Both may be absorbed in Brahman, but one, the Mayavadi, is blaspheming Krishna, whereas the Brahmavadi is not. They just don't know better. That was the four Kumaras. Okay, so that's Sukadeva Goswami. Oh my God, one early. Anyway, Kashyapa was also present in the time of Arjuna's birth. Whoops, sorry. Kashyapa, one of the Prajapatis, the son of Maharishi, and one of the sons-in-law of Prajapati, Daksha. He is the father of gigantic bird, Garuda, who was given elephants and tortoises as eatables. I wish I had time to tell that whole story. Anyway, it is a story I like to tell. So once there were two ladies, Vinata and Kadru, who were the wives of Kashyapa, and they're pretty envious of each other. To make a long story short, Kadru had 1,000 sons, snakes. Vinata had 2 sons, Aruna, who later on became the chariot driver of the sun god, and also Garuda. So they had previously made a bet, and the bet was one would become the other one's servant. It was based upon the color of the tail of the horse called Uchayashrava. So we have Vinata betting that the tail is white, and Kadru betting it's black. The tail was actually white. So what happened, I'm trying to go quickly through the story, is that Kadru realized, the mother of the snakes, realized the tail was white and she was going to lose the bet, so she had all of her snakies go into the tail of the horse, and the tail became black. And so therefore, Vinata, the mother of Garuda, had to become the humble servant of her sister. Whoops. Wait till Panchatava. Jai Shishi Panchatava. At least they're still here. Thank God. Isn't it? I mean, I was getting anxious. So, because they like to go on Sankirtan too. So anyway, so Vinata becomes the servant of Kadru, and she and Garuda have to carry all these snakes around, and also Kadru around. And so Garuda tries to kill the snakes one time. He flies real high to the sun, thinking they're going to be burnt because they're cold-blooded. Snakes can die very easily in the sun. And then Kadru prays, and Indra rains down, and the snakes are saved. And so Garuda goes to the snakes. Oh, my God. And he says to the snakes, I want to win freedom for my mother and for me. And the snakes say, the only way you're going to get freedom is if you can get the amrit, the nectar, that the demigods won, when there was the churning of the Milk Ocean. And that amrit was actually saved in a very secure, guarded place. And Garuda said, okay, I'm going to get that amrit. So he flies to where the amrit is, and he goes through a whole series of adventures, like breaking apart a whole wheel is meant to chop someone to pieces. They go, and he gets the amrit, and Indra starts to attack him. He's very worried that the amrit's going to be given to the snakes. And so Indra fires his thunderbolt at Garuda, and Garuda has this gigantic wing. And just one feather comes out. That's it, to respect Indra's thunderbolt. And basically what happens is Indra decides, well, let's make friends. And so they make a deal that, well, actually, what's mentioned here about the tortoises and elephants, that was to give Garuda strength so he could fight and get the Amrit. And he also ate people too, so that's another thing. But he doesn't eat Brahmins, he eats even people. So you better be a Brahmin, you better chant your rounds, or else Garuda can take you for prasadam. So anyway, that's how he got his strength. So anyway, so he makes a deal with Indra. Indra says, I don't want the snakes to get the nectar. And Garuda says, I agree with you, but I want my mother to be free. So they make a deal that Garuda is going to give the snakes the nectar, and then tell the snakes, go take your ritual bath before you drink the nectar. And then Indra's going to steal it all away, so they never take the nectar. And so Indra steals it away. The snakes are really upset. There's a few drops of nectar left in the grass, and the snakes are licking it. Some of them got forked tongues. How do you like that story? That's from the Mahabharata. It's really interesting. So anyway, that's Garuda. So Kasha, I like the story so much. He married, that's Garuda's not married, but we're talking about Kashyapa. Married 13 daughters of Prajapati Daksha, and their names are Aditi, Diti, Danu, Kashta, Arishta, Surasa, Ila, Muni, Kruda, Vasha, Tamra, Surabhi, Sarama, and Timi. So there's a lot of descriptions about this in the Bhagavatam. And you find that some of his wives, they actually, anyway, their children didn't like each other, like Aditi and Diti. You know, Diti is the mother of the Daityas, Aditi is the mother of Dityas, which is the demigods. And then you have all these other, the Kodavasa. Anyway, I don't have time to talk about all of them, but it's really interesting children. Quite a family. Some of them birds, some of them snakes, some of them demons, some of them rakshasas. And you can imagine what it's like when they have their family reunion. Let's have a family get-together picnic. So some of them may eat each other. Because Garuda eventually got the benediction that he can eat snakes. So he's able to eat his half-brothers. Oh my God. You got to be careful when you go over the picnic. You may get eaten. Can you imagine? Confirmed. He begot many children, both demigods and demons, by those wives. From his first wife, Aditi, all the 12 Adityas, demigods, were born. One of them is Vamana, the incarnation of Godhead. The great sage Kashyapa was also present at the time of Arjuna's birth. He received a presentation of the whole world from Parashuram, and later on, he asked Parashuram to go out of the world. His other name is Arishtanemi. He lives on the northern side of the universe. Interesting. I could tell a lot more stories, but we don't have time. Angirasa, he is the son of Maharishi Angira, and is known as Brahaspati, the priest of the demigods. It is said that Dronacharya was his partial incarnation. Interesting. Shukracharya was the spiritual master of the demons, and Brahaspati challenged him. His son is Kacha, and he delivered the fire weapon first to Bharadwaja Muni. So Kacha has an interesting story about Kacha, which is there in the Bhagavatam too. Kacha is the son of Brahaspati. He was sent to become the disciple of Shukracharya. Does everyone remember the story? It's a Bhagavatam story. So anyway, Kacha, okay, as quickly as possible. So Kacha wanted, the demigods wanted to know about how to do Mritu Sanjivani, to bring people who were dead back to life. They didn't have that. Shukracharya had that ability. So Kacha, was sent by Brahaspati to be the disciple of Shukracharya. So he said, Guru Maharaj. And so he began to serve Shukracharya many different ways. The demons didn't like it, and they attempted to kill Kacha many times, and he was always brought back by Shukracharya. Even one instance, whew, oh my God. Oh my God. I know, I'm not going to tell a story. where he was turned into wine, or in particles of him were put into wine, just ground up by the demons. And Shukracharya drank that wine. And then Shukracharya chanted the mantra to bring Kacha back. And Kacha said, if I come back, I'm going to split open your stomach. So Kacha said to him, teach me the Mrityu Sanjivana mantra, so if I split your stomach when I come back to life, then I can bring you back to life too. Remember the story now? Interesting story. So he brings Shukracharya back to life, very nice, and he gets ready to say goodbye to Shukracharya. He's served him for like 100 celestial years, but there's a problem. Because Shukracharya's daughter, Devyani, is in love with him. And she says, I love you. And he says, no way, you're like my sister, because, the guru's daughter. It's not really a proper relationship. People had some culture in those days, actually. And so, he says, no, Mataji or whatever. And she gets really angry. And she curses him. She says, because of this, you're going to forget not you're going to forget, but you're going to lose the power to do the Mrityu Sanjivani mantra. And he curses her. And because of this, you're not going to marry a Brahmin. So later on, there's that whole story in the Bhagavatam where she marries Yayati. I'm not going to tell that whole story because I can go in for three hours telling that story of Devyani and Sarmishta. Anyway, that's the story of Kacha. And later on, because he's learned the mantra, but he can't use it, he teaches it to the demigods anyway. And the demigods have Mrityu Sanjivana. Okay. So we're talking about Angirasa. He begot 6 sons like the fire god by his wife, Chandramasi, one of the reputed stars. He could travel in space, and therefore he could present himself even in the planets of Brahmaloka and Indraloka. He advised the king of heaven, Indra, about conquering the demons. Once he cursed Indra, this is an interesting story, who thus had to become a hog on the earth and was unwilling to return to heaven. Prabhupada loves that story. He explains how illusion is such that even after Indra was cursed to become a hog, and of course, as a hog, he had a hog family and little hog babies. Piglets, they're called in English. So, he has his whole family, his hog wife, hog babies, and he was so attached to them. And the demigods are thinking, we need him back. We're having trouble. There's no temple president. So basically, they went down and said, you got to come back. And he said, no, I have so many responsibilities. There's loving relationships here. See how this attachment is there? Keeps us in the material world. This is a sannyas class. So many loving, what about my, pigs have a lot of piglets at one time, like up to 8. So he had big family. So they make an arrangement, basically, the butcher comes, starts killing his wife, his children. Then he thinks, well, maybe I better become Indra again. He goes back. It's a famous story. Prabhupada really loved that story because it illustrated many different philosophical points. Because Prabhupada says here, is unwilling to return to heaven. Such is the power of the attraction of the illusory energy. Even a hog does not wish to part with its earthly possessions in exchange for a heavenly kingdom. Wow. He was the religious preceptor of the natives of different planets. So we can end relatively shortly. Any questions or comments about any of these points? Yes. Oh, we have one question back there. What? Okay, quick. Joldi. Apurate. Yeah.
I'm not sure that I understand the point of what is purpose of hearing metaphorical stories.
Yeah.
In sense that all Prabhupada stories are completely true, it happens, and we have full faith in that, and
Yes.
according to that we try to follow and take advantage of
Yes,
that. What is purpose? Yeah.
I understand that, but there are some metaphorical stories too. The story of Puranjana, for example, in the fourth canto, Puranjana represents all of us. It basically means every man. So the Bhagavatam teaches sometimes through metaphor or similes too. Similes too. Just like Krishna says. Just like in the Bhagavad Gita, Vasamsi jirnani yata vihaya, that the soul is changing bodies just like what? One gives up old clothes and takes up new clothes. That doesn't mean that actually changing bodies means you unzip yourself at the time of death. So first of all, it's not devotees, and even Bhaktivinoda Thakur told metaphorical stories. If anyone knows the Jaiva Dharma, that's a metaphor, or it's a story told to illustrate certain points. So this is done by the acharyas. Now, that story that I told about the bird flying in the mouth was not told to me by Prabhupada. I don't know the Shastric reference for it. And so I said it could be a metaphorical story. So there's a common teaching technique that great devotees utilize, isn't it? By telling metaphorical stories or similes. Krishna uses it all the time, isn't it? So, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. And another one, if I can.
Yeah, ask another question.
Yeah, there was stories like that hills and mountains had wings.
With
recently.
wings.
Yeah, and it was cut off by
Indra, yeah.
Is that metaphorical or is that true? And when
that's true because Prabhupada presents it as true. You can if you know what's called hermeneutics, you know when to distinguish between true stories and whether it's metaphorical to prove a particular point. Yeah, I mean somehow I can understand how mountains had wings. It's not hard for me to understand that. Mountains have wings. Birds have wings. Why can't mountains? Planes have wings too. Yeah, so, I mean, it's obvious. There's sometimes when it's obviously a metaphorical story. Usually, just looking at, usually women don't get pregnant by birds flying into their mouths. That's why I say it may be metaphorical or maybe some mystical thing that happened. But I'm trying to look at it from a practical point of view. Birds, otherwise the ladies would just have to be careful when they go for a walk in the park. To keep something in front of their mouths. So it's usually physiologically, and Vyasadeva and his wife, Vyasadeva was an empowered incarnation, too. There's no mention that. Anyway, whatever. Of course, it could happen. I'm not saying things couldn't happen, isn't it? But I'm trying to look at it from a hermeneutical point of view, because if we actually Anyway, there's a lot of things that we go out and we tell the public about. People are going to reject Krishna consciousness, isn't it? So we have to learn how to present things like that. I mean, I have no trouble with a lady giving birth to birds. Happens all the time. Demons, yes, I see that all the time. People giving birth. But, we have to use this is called hermeneutics. And so, and also it's not a story that I know Shastric reference from. So I preface it as being told by a devotee who I respect. Okay? Okay, one more question because you had a question too. Oh, you thought you had a question. Who else has a question? Yes. Can you imagine going in the park and then
It's not working.
whoop, she's leaving. Stay out of the park. Yeah. There's sometimes hyperbole is there too. No, it's not. I don't think it's impossible. Krishna could do anything. I mean, Krishna had 16,108 wives, and I believe that. But sometimes, you'll say, how much money does so-and-so have? You may say, well, he has millions of dollars or billions of dollars. Whereas he may only have 100,000, There's a way of speaking too. If I saw someone with 10 wives, I would say, boy, they have millions of wives. Or I would say, boy, you have unlimited wives. I would say, you're crazy. How do you remember all their names? Anyways, so, there's different ways of looking at things. I accept Shastra 100%. But Shastra does use metaphors sometimes. And stories like the Puranjana story. Like that. And, Prabhupada tells stories. Like, I remember Prabhupada told one story that was a little different than the Bhagavatam story about the birds in the tree. All right, I'll tell the story real quickly so I don't get caught up. He said that there were two birds, a female bird and a male bird, kapota, kapoti. And they were having a lot of little baby birds, birdinis, whatever they're called. Birdlings, birdinis, whatever. And so they were very happy. So they all go out to get some nice worm prasadam for their children. And so while they're out getting worm prasadam for the children, guess what happens? A hunter comes and the children fall into the net. And the wife comes back first, the female bird, comes back first, sees the children in the net, and she thinks, I'm going to save them. And guess what happens? She flies into the net, gets captured. Now, the Bhagavatam tells the story one way, and Prabhupada tells the story a different way. It's interesting. So the Bhagavatam says the story is that he faints and he falls into the net. Prabhupada tells the story that he sees them all being captured in the net. Prabhupada said the bird takes sannyas. So here's a Prabhupada class, He's giving a class and he tells a story. And the male bird sees his family, he takes sannyas. So which is the right version? So, anyway, it's teaching. We have to understand the Bhagavatam. The purpose of the Bhagavatam is to teach us gradually to become detached, to get rid of anartha, so we become capable of understanding the 10th canto of Bhagavatam. The smiling face, isn't it? You know, the Bhagavatam, you look at the Bhagavatam from that particular perspective. It's called teleology. What is the purpose of the Bhagavatam? Not just to tell you stories. You know, why are you learning about all the king and the kings had children, and the chronology? Because it's all meant to bring you to that purpose. And it's not just a separate, all these different separate stories and separate prayers that have no connection with each other, isn't it? Bring you to the purpose. So, you get to the 10th canto. You're free enough from lust so you can understand Krishna's pastime, so you're not thinking it's just like some lusty boy, doing whatever. That's the Bhagavatam. I mean, it's medicine. Paramahansa Sangita. And sometimes the Bhagavatam speaks metaphorically, isn't it? I mean, to me, that's completely obvious. And the dynasties are real. Anyway, I don't want to get into hermeneutically analyzing the whole Bhagavatam. It's not appropriate for class right now. But we have, I have complete faith in the Bhagavatam, complete faith in Bhagavad Gita. But you have to understand things from hermeneutical point of view. Does that make sense? And the bird flying in the mouth is not a Bhagavatam story. Yeah, I'm trying to see things from a common sense perspective, isn't it? Anyway, and I have full faith. Okay, on that happy note. Okay, all you on internet land. Boy, a lot of people watching. Thank you all for watching. All glories to Prabhupada. End meeting. Okay, thank you. Thank you for all being such nice hosts here and tolerating me. And I really like coming here. There's a lot of good spirit, a lot of youth.